Hello and welcome to this video where I'll be analysing the novel Jekyll and Hyde. Later on in this video I'm going to reveal the fact that Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde are one and the same. So if you don't want to know that Jekyll and Hyde are the same person, you better stop watching the video now. If you haven't seen the previous video I've made on Robert Louis Stevenson, it's called Helpful Information on Robert Louis Stevenson, you might want to watch that first, as it gives a lot of background that is useful for this video, such as the experiences that led up to his writing of Jekyll and Hyde, such as his interest in the subconscious mind and his frequentation of brothels in his youth. So to begin, Robert Louis Stevenson was born in 1850 in Edinburgh, and he was a sickly child, and in fact he was ill for much of his life, and he died at the age of 44, which is relatively young. And it was while he was suffering from a fever that he had a dream which contained some key elements from Jekyll and Hyde, such as the transformation scene and the trampling scene where the girl is trampled by Edward Hyde. And it was this dream that inspired him to begin writing the novel. The novel was written, or at least the first draft of it was written, in just 3 days. His wife then read the manuscript and suggested that it might be unpublishable due to indecency laws. She then suggested that rather than presenting it as a straightforward story, he should present it as an allegory instead. So Robert Louis Stevenson burnt his original manuscript and started from scratch, and he reworked the tale in a more sort of subtle and understated form. Unfortunately, we don't know what the first draft contained, of course, because it was burned. But that's just one of those things. But it's this subtlety, where much is hinted at but never clearly revealed, that makes Jekyll and Hyde such an interesting book. And it's probably why it became an immense success upon publication, and why it's still very popular today. What we do see throughout the book, though, are a number of themes, which I'll briefly discuss here, but I'll analyse them in more depth in future videos, so keep an eye out for those. So the first theme to discuss here is duality. What is duality? Well, it's something that often has two contrasting aspects. So the most obvious one is Jekyll and Hyde, the decent Dr. Jekyll and the evil Mr. Hyde. We also see other sort of forms of duality, such as respectability and sordidness, appearance and reality, and also the conscious and subconscious, which were things, as I mentioned, that Robert Louis Stevenson was very interested in. Another theme is science and religion and the tension between them, which still exists today and was very marked in the Victorian era. So, for instance, in Victorian Society, old ideas such as mankind originating from Adam and Eve being very much undermined by science and theories of evolution. In Jekyll and Hyde, we see the experiments of Henry Jekyll leading to catastrophic results. So it could be interpreted that perhaps Robert Louis Stevenson is giving some sort of warning of the dangers of science. Another topic that's discussed in the book is Dr. Jekyll's taking of powders. These powders effectively turn him into a monstrous person, and these powders are effectively drugs. And these drugs have a devastating effect on his personality, changing him from a decent person to someone who is literally unrecognisable. So that has a modern resonance as well. And then there's also the physical portrayal of characters in the book, not least Mr. Hyde, who is said to have been dwarfish and hideous to look at. Now, in Victorian times, it was common to associate people's physical appearance with behaviour. And so with Mr. Hyde, because he's a horrible person, he was portrayed as dwarfish and horrible to look at. And of course, in reality, there is no link between physical appearance and behaviour, and to suggest such a thing is a pretty horrible thing to do. Basically saying, the worse you are to look at, the horribler you must be. That's a terrible thing to say, but people did believe it back in Victorian times, or a lot of people did. So I'll summarise a bit here. Jekyll and Hyde is a great novel with one of the greatest twists of all time, notably the fact that Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde are one and the same. The unfortunate thing is, perhaps like me, you knew that in advance of reading the book, and that really undermines, the best part of the novel, that twist, that these two completely different people are in fact one and the same. And it's a great shame that people do know that. Of course, back in Victorian times when the book was first published, that would have been an amazing twist, a really great revelation, and I think it's one of the greatest twists in all of literature. But it's still a great book because it looks at the fact that we're all a mixture of good and evil, and we're all a mixture of appearance and reality as well. The book's cultural impact has been huge, as you're probably aware. It's been adapted numerous times for films and television. There have been spin-offs and imitations and the like, and people are, still very much interested in it today. And its central point is so well known that people with wildly varying personality traits are often referred to as being Jekyll and Hyde characters. The fear of science still resonates today, with genetic modification and artificial intelligence unsettling many. And the book is as popular today as it was when first published over 130 years ago. I'll just quickly finish by doing a quick plug. I work for Firestone Books, and we've published Jekyll and Hyde in a variety of useful formats to help students perhaps improve their results. So please do have a look at the links below. Thanks for watching, and please do subscribe.